This is the news from Moscow. You're listening to simultaneous interpretation from the Russian by John Glad. Good evening. You're here on Channel 1, the informational television agency. Today in our program we have the following news. In Tbilisi, the opposition has taken the capital house of Mr. Gamsakhourdia, who has escaped. A speech by Patriarch Alexei II. Military who have refused to swear allegiance to Ukraine are being sent to Russia. We're having a scandal over humanitarian aid and Bush's Pacific trip. Today, after 15 days of battling, the State House fell, but the bunker where Gamsakhourdia was is empty. He utilized the only exit, which was intentionally not blocked by the opposition. Tengiz Kitovani, who was the head of the National Guard, declared at a press conference that there were more than 40 hostages in the house who were being tortured. What's happened to Gamsakhourdia himself? Roughly 9 in the morning, a column with a car in which Mr. Gamsakhourdia was located crossed the border. They reached the city Ganja and temporarily stopped there. Azerbaijan was not informed about Gamsakhourdia's arrival, and there was no talk of providing him political asylum. At roughly 3 p.m., Gamsakhourdia went to the city of Ijevan in the Republic of Armenia. From Yerevan, we know from TASS that the president's Mercedes, accompanied by 2 Volgas and 2 Nivas, is close to the city of Ijevan, a capital, but we have no confirmation of these reports. So we're waiting for news from Tbilisi. Here we have Mr. Amanidze, who left the State House just before the New Year on the 29th, when I was to be tried, and likewise Juashvili and Abuladze. I was accused of not shooting, giving the order to shoot. I said, whom should I shoot at? Which enemies? He had intended to leave on the 19th, but he was held back by insults which were directed toward him from the entourage of Gamsakhourdia. How could Gamsakhourdia have disappeared from that bunker? What are your thoughts? He could not possibly have escaped. I think this is explained by the honorable nature of Tengiz Kitovani, who, up to the very end, did not want to spill blood. There will be a trial, according to Mr. Razmadze of Gamsakhourdia. The totalitarian regime in Georgia and opposition and its conflict is an internal affair of the Republic. We now have telephone contact, and we asked if the new military government could be considered a coup. Sigwa said, we have the participation here not only of military forces but of the people. The main thing, the people have arisen against this regime of Gamsakhourdia. In only 1 year, he managed to create a totalitarian state. What's going to happen in Georgia now? One of the leaders, Jaba Asiliani, said that the council would lay down its powers after the new election, a new president was elected. Now, for now, there is a presidential consulting council, and the elections will take place in the spring. Asiliani did not exclude the possibility that Shevardnadze would be participating in speeding up democratic processes. This is Mr. Shevardnadze. I am prepared to take part in the process of democratization as much as I am able to. When the conflict commenced there between the totalitarian regime and the democratic forces, when the first victims appeared, I offered my services in mediation. and said I was prepared to take part in this process. We will have the full interview after our program with interview with Mr. Shevardnadze. This says News 1. In Minsk, the agreement of agreements reached will be tested out in republics. So we might lose one of the links in the agreement. I have in mind the army. Today, Ukraine is conducting a swearing in of the oath of loyalty to Ukraine. Vladimir Nikolaevich, Ukraine has declared that the Black Sea Fleet is being transferred to its jurisdiction. Does that correspond to the Minsk agreements? I can state unambiguously, no. This is a violation of these agreements. The naval forces, which are part of strategic forces, do not enter into those forces which can be declared anybody's national property. Any sovereign state has the right to armed forces, and that includes the navy. Does Ukraine have that right? I consider Ukraine not only has a right, but I support that right and that desire. However, to resolve the question as to what this navy should be, we have to formulate our tasks. I consider that, first of all, that might be protection of the national border. That is a border service. The second task is the struggle with contraband and smuggling, which is a problem for all naval states. When we have thus formulated our tasks, we can now ask ourselves the question, what sort of navy we have? The Ukraine needs the type of navy. Does it need the kind of navy which has a strategic abilities and potential, and which is fulfilling important functions for all the states of the Commonwealth, including Ukraine? This is the protection and of the inviolable national borders. Interfax states today that the first 100 soldiers who refuse to serve Ukraine will be sent to Russia, where they were recruited. The tenseness created by the Ukrainian statement is now being increased by the generals who don't lose their powers. This is according to Rio. More than 80% of the officers have agreed to swear loyalty. From Sevastopol, we have a piece of news that there are political meetings at which the sailors are demanding that the Navy not be handed over to Ukraine, but that the Navy be maintained for all the members of the Commonwealth. So they have turned to address to the other bodies that the decision of Ukraine be recognized as illegitimate. Yes, the army is having a hard time. And in this situation, it's important for us to know the position of the command of the armed forces of the Commonwealth. As I understand that you represent the official point of view. What is the mood like in the army? It's very complex. In the forces of the former Soviet Union, today's Commonwealth, a soldier who was born in Tver or Komna and who has been sent to Poltava, Vinnytsia, or Fergana, whom should he swear loyalty to? Whose laws should he observe? Who will take responsibility for his fate, for his social situation, for his pension, for his housing, salary? So there are a lot more questions than ready answers. But we have to search out those answers, and very quickly. This is a very complex, fateful time for our homeland, and we have decided to ask our officers soldiers, what they think. And with that goal, on the 14th of January, we are calling an army meeting of officers. And what can it resolve? This is not a political organization and not a service organization, but a social organization, a body. The maximum which it might do would be to develop acceptable recommendations for our political leaders with regard to adopting a professional resolution of the situation. After Russia, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan freed up prices. One of the measures of social protection are the so-called family cards, which provide the bare minimum of foodstuffs. Ukraine and Belarus have declared that this is not enough, and they have coupons. On the 1st of, they're going to have, Moldova is going to follow their example. There are negotiations being conducted with a French company for printing Moldavian lei. So the ruble is going to have an even harder time soon. Well, what is the situation like in our country? The prices are the topic number one today for the press. People are concerned not on prices, but are concerned about the empty shelves. This process began much sooner, much earlier. Vodka cost 57 rubles and hard to get, but there's no milk at all. So they're talking about Halsbad Kamsahurdi and our Black Sea float. Rumors that food is being returned to suppliers because the people wouldn't pay those prices have turned out to be unconfirmed. People are buying a lot. A chicken which costs 31 rubles for a kilo. No one wants to share with some poor grandmother. Everybody's buying 2 or 3 right away. Everyone is expecting a rise in prices. But we do have a market. When someone has something which he can sell at a free price, and someone is able to and can buy at that price. So there was a black market, and there is one now, and it will continue to exist. But to buy a lot, we have to produce a lot. But we have not even begun to produce a lot. So we should not expect a quick drop in prices. In the near future, we will have subsequent price rises and impoverishment of the people. And once within the notorious market, we have sold all our goods and eaten through all our food. Maybe that's when we'll begin work. Maybe. But we're sorry for the grandmothers. Today, in Nagorno-Karabakh, there was opened the first session of the Supreme Soviet of the Republic, just declared there. 51 members of parliament will take place. 30 places are vacant for the election. At the election, there should have been representatives of the Azerbaijani groups who are boycotting it. On the agenda is a law on the emergency situation. From Vladikavkaz, we learn that in southern Ossetia there's no shooting. The confrontation has stopped. This is a temporary truce, which is connected to the events in Tbilisi, where the military council has taken over rule of the Republic of Georgia. This did not influence the Council of Abkhazia, which had its meeting today in Sukhumi. The deputies limited themselves to organizational questions. The chairman was elected, the 40-year-old doctor of historical sciences, Vladislav Artsimba. We continue to recollect old holidays, religious holidays. This is Bethlehem, and this is the cathedral built over the spot of the cave where Christ was born. Today is the Orthodox Christmas Eve, after the 40-day fasting period of Lent, a fasting period, and it begins when the first star shows. Christmas does. Dear brothers and sisters, countrymen, Orthodox people of our country, I congratulate all of you on the holiday of Christmas. This is a great saving holiday. which we celebrate on these days, is a holiday of peace and God's love for men. And we need to display love and kindness, goodness to those who are near to us, with whom we live together, and with whom we proceed down that same path of life. There are so many people today who are in need of charity and human responsiveness. I likewise congratulate all of you on the new year. May God grant that the summer be a summer which is favorable, that God might give us tolerance to each other, so that we might overcome our confrontations, our anger, which often fills our souls. A blessed New Year and a happy, joyous holiday of Christ's birth. Today, the Patriarch of Moscow, Alexei II, who just spoke, will serve a service in the Yelokhovo Cathedral in Moscow. This small event took place here at a clinic for gynecology at the University Hospital in the maternity ward. All of the employees were there, including the dean, Dr. Yurigin. This is Alexander Olinov speaking here. We are fortunate in having received this lucky icon. This is the first time in 20 years we have an icon which helps nature. For us, this is a deep symbol. This is always hope, the birth of a human being. And so if we have hope, then we need faith. The icon was given to the hostess, Mrs. Krasnova. We always help, and if we have a symbol, maybe God will help us too. I hope that the icons may help my birthing. I hope that the icon will help bring a new person to the world. I hope to have a son. The Virgin helps women to give children, to bear children. There are 2,000 little people who are born here every year. Let's hope they all are born healthy and happy. This is the Washington Cathedral in Washington of St. Nicholas. It was built 30 years ago in the tradition of ancient Russian architecture, modeled on in the Dmitry Cathedral in Vladimir. This is Alexei II, who recently visited the United States. For a long time in the cathedral there was no internal painting, but now the dream of Russian Orthodox believers is being realized. We have 5 Russian icon painters who have begun just recently, but already by Christmas the parishioners will be able to see the frescoes which decorate the altar. On the eve of Christmas, the liturgy was given in Russian and in English, for Americans also adopt Orthodoxy. I want to congratulate all of my countrymen on this great holiday of Christ's birth. This is Professor and Father Grigori from Washington, D.C. I want them to believe and to know that difficult times will pass. If people have the desire to achieve the light, freedom, truth, I want to wish all Orthodox people that they might get together in a friendly fashion and attempt to accomplish our common goal, to resurrect sacred Russia. Washington and Seoul are prepared to not conduct the major maneuvers entitled Team Spirit, according to George Bush and Rodeu, but with one condition. Pyongyang has to agree to international inspection of its nuclear sites. The West is afraid that only 1 year separates Northern Korea from creating its own atom bomb. From Seoul, we have another sensational piece of news. According to the South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Northern Korea will sign an agreement with the IAEA on nuclear security, and thus we might soon witness the disappearance on the Korean Peninsula of the last hotbed of the Cold War. But today in Seoul needs mutual understanding in the area of trade relations. But South Korea is not about to open its market for the import of American rice. But in Tokyo, where Bush will go tomorrow, these disagreements will have new aspects. The chief topic of the negotiations, according to a governmental official, will be cars. That will also be topic number 2, and there won't be any number 3 or 4. Cars account for 3/4 of the deficit with Japan, trade deficit, and the Japanese now have 30% of the market in the United States, and so the Americans are shutting down their factories. So if we're going to develop strategies for 21, the leaders of the two countries have to develop automobile standards and norms for emissions. The Japanese have already announced a number of measures which should make the Japanese market more easily accessible to Western producers, but there are concessions which cannot be made, according to Mr. Miyazawa, because his cabinet is already declining in popularity. In Yugoslavia, the truce is being observed between the Serbs and the Croatians, but there's a movement of troops which is a violation of the agreement. Both sides have accepted the idea of stationing UN troops. Russia may be asked to send its own troops as part of this force. That's according to the British paper, the Daily Express. According to Mr. Hamilton, who is the Minister of Defense of Great Britain, this might have a positive. There might be a positive answer if the food of the Soviet troops will be paid for. But we don't know what's going to happen said about that in Russia. Now, the situation with regard to the deportation of 12 Palestinians in Israel has led to a complicated situation here. We have here the Islamic Conference. The Israeli delegation has refused to discuss the deportation in Poland. The protests are continuing over the prices. We have strikes of several enterprises in Krakow. There is a strike of protest called by Solidarity 80. Mr. Valenza admitted that life is getting worse. He is worse, which of late has had too many theoreticians and now needs practical experts. A UN doctor and two members of UNICEF were wounded, and also one Russian was wounded. They were rendering assistance to persons who had suffered in the clashes. Since November, roughly 20,000 persons have perished in Somalia. A powerful bomb was exploded in Belfast. The IRA warned the police about this terrorist act. Several policemen who were conducting the evacuation were wounded during the explosion. In the Moscow airport, there was a plane which was not unloaded for a whole day. It was 120 tons of beef. What is this? More ridiculous Russian affairs. No, there were rumors that the meat was not acceptable as for human food. Documents were provided confirming that the meat was not infected. Only after that was the plane admitted to Moscow, but it was not unloaded since supplemental documents were likewise requested. Until the circumstances clarified, this plane will be sent to Murmansk, and we've learned that it's already in Murmansk. Now, we're going to see a few video reports which we have received by satellite. The police of Denver in America were curious about the unusual sounds coming from a private garage, and they fined the owner of the garage for $2,500 for keeping this lion, whose conduct is often, as we all know, unpredictable. In Harbin, in China, the International Ice Festival has opened. The colorful sculptures and these fairy tale-like castles are an unusually beautiful view. That's the sports section coming up. You're listening to simultaneous interpretation from the Russian by John Glad. Good evening. Unexpectedly, the International Chess Championship ended in Italy. Kasparov had tied with Khalifman. Anand beat Beliavsky and now has 6 points, and is in first place. He might be overtaken by Gelfand if he wins the postponed match with Karpov. He has 5.5 points. There are 3.5 days to the begin of the Olympic Games in Albertville. The Olympic flame torch has passed over the very many kilometers in the roads of France to take part in the ceremony. Roughly 2,000 athletes from 60 countries were taking place. The Olympic area occupies 1,600 square kilometers. There are 23 stations checking on the weather. 11.5 billion francs have been spent, but whether there'll be any profits will become clear only later. The athletes don't have much time left. Now they're checking out their forces, their abilities. This is Toni Nieminen from Finland. More than once has delivered traumatic blows to his opponents on the ski jump. In his ability, this Nieminen from Finland does not have any equals. For the time being, he has won the tournament of 4 ski jumps. Just as confident is Alberto Tomba in the slalom class, where he won over Armand Bittner. This was 24th victory. You have the impression that it's impossible to beat him if he doesn't make any mistakes himself. Evidently, the Olympic season has its special requirements. But he's achieved almost everything, but for him, it's all a matter of prestige. And he's leading in the World Cup Championship. In the Flying Dutchman Yacht Championship, we see 2 French brothers who are winning, and Vincent Berger, who have received no penalties. In the group of leaders, they are basically Europeans, and that's not an accident, since this class of sailing is the most popular in Europe. The Paris-Tripoli Cape Town rally is taking place. It's across the equator. More than half of the path is over. Of the 333 cars machines which began, only 109 are left. Our Kamazes are still running, with Viktor Moskovsky as the best team. Andrei and Tatiana did not start. This is the weather coming up. In Murmansk, it's -12 to -17 Celsius. Karelia, -2 to -7. In Belarus, it's -4 to +1 with precipitation. Ukraine, -1 to +4. In the south, +5 to +9. Middle Volga, -2 to -7. A little snow. Kazakhstan, -5 to +3. Snow in the west and north. Uzbekistan, +3 to +8. Snow in the mountains. In Perm, -10 to -15. In Novosibirsk, Tomsk, and Kemerovsk region is -3. In the Altai, -3 to -8. Krasnoyarsk, -27 to -32. And in the east, -40. In Yakutia, it gets down to -47. That's more than 50 degrees below Fahrenheit. Here it's in Magadan, it's -3 to -43, terribly cold. In the Kuril Islands, 0 to -5, a little bit of snow. St. Petersburg, -1 to -3. Moscow, -7, -9 at night, and -3 to -5 in the daytime. You've been listening to simultaneous interpretation from the Russian by John Glad. And this has been a program of the Informational Television Agency.